There we are, going live now. Dave.
Yabbity yabbity.
Okay, welcome everybody to Talking Niagara this morning. It is October 21st, and we're live every weekday mornings at 7 a.m. with our talk show covering the news that impacts the Niagara Falls area. And it is Tuesday, October 21st. Okay, so the governing Conservatives returned to the provincial legislature yesterday with an omnibus bill to remove municipal speed cameras and cut red tape. You know, you've got a concern about the speed cameras. I'll tell you one thing I've also got a concern about with this is that whenever I hear a bill about cutting red tape, they tend to do the opposite.
Yeah, it seems like governments can't help but add piles of red tape to it. But Ford is a conservative, and they're all about cutting regulations and red tape. And I think it's very possible that he will.
Well, yeah, yes. But also, usually the bureaucratic response when Conservatives say they're cutting red tape is the bureaucrats add to red tape.
Yeah, they bog things down because, of course, they want to protect their little kingdoms, and that's the problem with bureaucracies is they have these little power, little points of power. You know, and when they see cuts coming, they don't like it because that means their department will get cut and maybe even their job will be threatened. But I think all in all, I don't think we found recently that the federal government was bloated by 40% more employees than it had before Trudeau got in, and that the government was actually functioning extremely badly.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That the government was bloated, but not bloated with good ideas or efficiencies. And what had happened is the government got so bloated that it couldn't function. It had to go outside to private, private companies to help them do their work.
Yeah,
which is extraordinary. When you have to bring in outsiders to do your work and your own particular government is bloated by 40%. And the actual bloating of the government seems to be the problem of inefficiency. And so Carney will have to do the chop. I think every government is bogged down with bureaucracies of some kind, things that just don't make sense, duplication of services, and all that other kind of thing. So,
And we have the same issue about duplication of services, like even at municipal. Well, you think about it, there's many things that there's federal money, provincial money, and municipal money, municipalities doing things on things. And often that, you get the red tape, etc., that gets lost in the middle, doesn't it?
Yeah, and you get the municipal, provincial, and federal government jealously guarding their little piece of the operation. Now Doug Ford says, okay, he's going to start making efficiencies in government. We'll see. Now he's going to start shooting for the camera. I think that's probably the least. The traffic cameras coming around, I see that's one of the least important things going as these cameras. But it is a shot for popularity because a lot of people really don't like these cameras. They don't like the big brother looking at you all the time. But I maintain that if the different municipalities have found them to be effective, not just a money grab, you could take away the money grab very quickly by installing the cameras permanently at certain locations where everybody knows they are. You will not make a whole lot of money because people know where they are, but it will slow the traffic down in vulnerable areas like schools, particularly schools and parks where children are and where other places where a lot of old people.
One of the things I'm very much in favor of, main roads like your own where it's a 50 km/h. I favor reducing those to 40 or even 30 where there are school zones. In residential streets like mine, I favor the maximum speed limit being 25, but that would have to be set at a provincial level.
Yeah, I have. Well, in residential streets like yours, I have trouble accelerating up past 25 half the time.
I grant that, but there are nutcases out there that do.
Oh God, yeah. In my old neighborhood, there was a four-way stop, and the same guy every day blasted through it, going about 60, and at the same time he threw out his coffee cup. So the guy just had me annoyed beyond, and I had kids. So he just was confidently blowing through that stop because he knew it was a four-way, and so there's, I don't know how are you going to suggest though, what do you do but in residential areas? Do you then start putting up more cameras to bring people down? I think in roads and some of the residential areas have long stretches of straight road. They didn't think of overspeeding back when they designed the neighborhoods. Like if you think of Russell Street and Stanford Green Street and O'Neill Street. Well, O'Neill's got stops on it, but they're long straight ones.
Yeah.
And Ryle Street. And, back in the day, you could really kick it.
It is true that there is a tendency to put your foot down on a street like that on Russell.
Oh, I fully admit doing that on Maple Street. At one time, there was no stops on Maple Street from Stanley all the way down to Victoria.
Yeah.
So that's how I got downtown. So I'd go down Maple Street and we booted down Maple Street because you could really take off, especially at night. But even during the day, at night we didn't think it was any big problem because it wouldn't be anybody on the street. But that's just dumb thinking of dumb youth.
Yeah.
You're not thinking, maybe somebody out at night.
Well, you see, the one that bothers me is people like my brother-in-law. I told you about his 100-mile-an-hour antics. He'd just gun it down the end of his road, going as fast as he damn well could.
Yeah, and there's always the guy
Pelham
that
Road
thinks.
in St. Catherine, says Tara.
What's that?
Pelham Road in St. Catherine, says Tara, being one example. But Pelham Road is a main road, Tara. But again, you might need some of these main roads. There are people that go way too fast in them.
Yeah, I can bring something else up too.
Yeah,
you can get insurance now for 10% less if you have a governor in your car. The insurance will put a governor in your car, and it will it will record how you're driving, how fast you're driving, and all that, and you will get a reduced insurance rate. I refuse that, even though I have a really good driving record, no tickets, anything like that. It just gave me the creeps. I paid 10% more than I had to because I didn't want somebody overlooking me like that.
My concern about those sort of things is that if you just happen one day, I get it that 99% of the time you're doing 55 in a 50 zone, or 65 in a 60 zone or something like that. And then one day you just put your foot down because you're late for an appointment. And because you put your foot down and you're doing 75 in a 50, that's the point they ding you on your insurance.
Yes, it could be. But the very idea that they have that, and if you extrapolate from road cameras, like traffic calming cameras, if you extrapolate from there, where is the next law? Is the government then going to say that you must have an overseer type of component in your car that tells the government how you've been driving.
Yeah.
Is that the next step? And even though I would think that that might be good for a small percentage of the drivers in Ontario because they're bad drivers, the idea that the government is watching everything is kind of repulsive to me. It's just like the Big Brother thing.
Yeah.
But as far as, I think Doug Ford's overplayed his hand with the cameras. He's rightly said that they're a money grab in some areas when you rotate the cameras around. However, on the other hand, if those cameras are put in place permanently, then they're no longer a money grab because everybody knows where they are and will duly slow down in areas where there are schools.
Yeah, and I think the thing about the school zones is I think that's where you need the cameras, in the school zones, and you actually have to mark the school zones very clearly, and they should operate even on Saturdays and Sundays, as you know, all day.
You can also identify areas like bad corners where there's more than a lot more accidents, or a lot more speeders, something like that.
Yeah, there used to be
dangerous things have happened or continue to happen. We always talk about.
Yeah, there used to be some municipalities in Britain that used to put up danger, accident, accident hotspot, I think they used to call it.
Yeah, in those places you can post cameras, and but they have to be permanent, and so the people know that they're there all the time, and they have to be well signed. This is a camera because this is a notably dangerous area. So that kind of thing, you could do that, but I don't know what Doug Ford wants. There are certain communities that want that kind of thing and find that it's been valuable. Others, of course, have been hypocritical, and it's been a nice big tax grab for them.
Yeah. If you have accident hotspots, I think it would be useful to have a permanent high-level camera so you can actually understand what happens or the causes of the accident. And if you can figure out what the cause of the accident is, i.e. maybe somebody's turning onto a main road and jumping out into the fast lane when they shouldn't.
Well, the surveillance... We are already under constant surveillance.
Yeah.
You can, I assume that anywhere I go, I'm either being recorded or could be recorded at any instant because of nothing else. Everybody has a phone. There are cameras around everywhere. So there are cameras in the malls, cameras in stores.
Yeah.
Every time you go to most stores, there's a camera looking at you. Every little corner store has a tape where they can rewind it, and they could actually give it to the police if there happened to be an incident and so on. So you're already continually under surveillance.
Yeah.
So when it comes to
I'm not worried.
Type of cameras and that kind of thing, I think Doug's missing the point there myself, but it may be a real popular move on his part because most people are irked by these cameras. They have a dislike for them right off the bat, as we can tell how many of them get destroyed.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I'm not overly concerned about being spied upon, about there being cameras all over the place, because I'm not the sort of person to go steal things or break things or do something illegal anyway. So if you're seeing me going down an aisle in the supermarket, good for you.
Yeah, well, that all may be sane, but you're infringing upon the rights of the thieves of our society.
Yeah, but you see,
you're infringing. As a spokesman for the thieves of Ontario, I say that's infringing upon my rights to to get a good living.
For example, one of the worst examples I've seen is in supermarkets. I've seen packets of, let's call it biscuits or other snacks, whereby what has happened, they just leave the packets on the shelf. So what has happened is they've walked around and they've scoffed the entire contents of the packet, through the supermarket, and then leave the packet on the side. If anybody ever approaches them from the supermarket, they go, "Oh yeah, I'm paying for this when I get to the till."
Well,
we don't.
Yeah, we can get into that. Surveillance cameras are only so good. When somebody comes in, they got store dicks too. I know I pick them up a lot of the times myself when I start wandering around, because oftentimes I don't know exactly what I want, or I do, and then I just kind of wander around looking at stuff because I rarely go into a store. So when I do that, I can usually pick up a store deck. I can, all of a sudden there's somebody beside me looking at the labels of something, and that same person finds his or her way over to another place where they're checking out labels where I'm shopping. So unfortunately, theory of that, of course, comes down to us. We have to pay for it. But my whole point here was, to get away from, not to get too too far away from Doug Ford here. Remember, he's doing a lot of other things, which he sort of bounced back to the article. Not only does he want to streamline things, but he recessed government for a heck of a long time there, and so I don't know. When he talks about efficiencies, government was out of session for a very long time. So what's he talking about?
Yeah,
I think Doug Ford also here in the article, it talks about how the government's going to have to face up to the tariff and how badly it's affecting Ontario's economy, being the main industrial center of Canada, and the Trump administration wants to poach as much work from us as possible, particularly in the auto sector. It's going to be a real challenge going forward on how they're going to help maintain their government and the economy. Will this make him more popular because he's taken a strong stand against the beloved leader south of the border? Will this help sustain his popularity? It seems to me that all the stuff that he's talking about is all fine and good, but that is the linchpin that everybody's worried about. If Doug Ford could be less than the perfect leader in a big way, if he faces up to Trump's tariffs, he could still maintain. He could probably get another majority government if he had an election today.
Yeah, well, the other aspect about that, of course, is that it's not necessarily about Doug Ford and whether you like or dislike Doug Ford, but at the moment, is there a viable alternative government? There's nobody seemingly in the wings. Both Bonnie Crombie and Marit Stiles are not really effective leaders.
They actually have a red tape reduction minister, Andrea Conaghan, said she was excited about the opportunities this legislation will help to unlock for workers, businesses, and communities across the province. Yeah, being bogged down by government, we'll see. We've heard this before, haven't we? We've heard it but some contend that the haste will make waste instead by quickly trying to speed up permits and reduce regulations, and that they may actually cause slowdowns because people don't know, need time to adjust to these kind of things. And it says in the bill.
here's my response.
Bill proposed changes to enable the delivery of safe drinking water faster while supporting housing and infrastructure development. Well, if you're going to deliver safe water faster, you better make sure it's safe.
Here was my reaction to the my silent reaction to the red tape minister.
Yeah,
Dave?
yeah.
A silent hand clap there for them, because I know they won't do anything. I've got zero confidence in that person's ability, that person's, job being successful.
In the interest of efficiency, you're only allowed to silently clap 4 times before we move on.
I did. Okay.
Well done.
Well, so therefore, okay, moving on. Niagara CAOs laud shared services procurement efforts. So established in 2023, the Strategic Transformation Office was designed to coordinate shared services across the Niagara's municipalities, with emphasis upon joint procurement. And that could be a good thing.
Go ahead. Yeah.
It could be a good thing, because amongst anything else, if you're going a higher volume of something, you know that across the entire region, instead of each municipality buying their own, they're buying 1,000 of an item, across the whole region. Of course, that's going to bring discounts.
Yes, it is. And not only that, but you can have shared services. One of the examples here is a soil test. One of the communities, I can't remember which one, maybe it was, I can't remember, maybe it was Fort Erie or something. We're doing soil tests in their area, important soil tests. Well, what they found out is the region already had facilities for that. So they didn't have to do it all. They could get the region and team up with the region to do this more efficiently. We have a regional government, and to be able to coordinate the services of all the communities in the Niagara region seems to be a better use of one of the better uses of regional government, if you ask me. Where the regional government that can then coordinate projects. Now, this is very, very important to townships like West Lincoln.
The smaller townships,
the smaller ones,
the smaller townships take more advantage of it, because the thing is that the larger ones are probably the ones who mainly pay for it.
Well, the region established a strategic transformation office in 2023 to facilitate staff cooperation among the region and the 12 local municipalities by pooling resources and functions. That's basically what the article is about. Yeah. So because we pay regional taxes, and we got a whopping 9.6% increase last year, well, what is the region doing for us? Well, one of the things we can tap into is the region's facilities.
Yeah,
and not only that, the region can kind of coordinate between one municipality and the other. Well, if we talked about soil testing, so if Fort Erie is doing a soil test and they have to go through all the logistics of doing that, and find out that West Lincoln had done it 2 years ago, and they already have a lot of the information that you might need, and right down to contractors or whatever else and their experience, they can coordinate that. It could be a shared experience, that sort of thing. You said of procurement, buying things and services, purchasing things and services. Yeah, you could probably save a whole lot of time by leaning on the experiences of your neighboring municipalities, but at the same time, you can reduce the cost by kind of, like as you said, make arrangements with suppliers of both substance and services to reduce the price based on volume.
Yeah, for example, if you think about how much road salt we need for the winter months. If we buy that road salt as for the whole region and just get it delivered, X amount to Niagara, Y amount to St. Catharines, Z amount to Fort Erie, etc., we're bound to make savings because we're buying a whole lot. We're buying a larger amount of road salt.
Yeah, so that's that's just it's just make common sense. So I think even though it's kind of a dull subject, and I hate to bring this on our listeners, the fact of the matter is it seems to be a very positive thing that the region and the different regional governments are looking for more intermunicipality cooperation, and it's not just to be Mr. Nice Guy. It's actually to save the taxpayer locally and regionally money. Now we find that government is becoming more and more expensive, that whopping 9.6%. And the difficulty, Bob Gell has said, well, we want to keep it down to 3.5% this year as the max. And they're finding it extremely difficult, particularly when you start adding up what the police need, and in our own community, what the firefighters need, and the huge bills that they cost. And we found that our own CAO, Burgess, has wanted to coordinate, have our fire services dispatches connected with the region and shared responsibility with St. Catharines and other regions. Yeah. So there's a good example there of cooperation between the region, between cities, and which will reduce the price tag for each individual in the region, as well as municipal.
Yeah. And my concern is that everywhere we can save money, let's try and do so, but we don't do so at the expense of forgetting some small place. And that's the problem. You're going to forget a small township like Niagara-on-the-Lake or Smithville or something like that.
Well, that's the whole point. They little towns like that have much less resources. Yeah. So and a lot less money, and their projects are smaller. So And so when they come to buy, use the example of salt, but I think it's pretty much regionally purchased now. But let's say salt. Let's say West Lincoln wants to buy salt, and they're going to buy a small volume of it, so it will cost per ton more because of the small volume. But if you add it in with the procurement of the region, then it's reduced down, because it's, even though they're getting a small amount, the region or other communities in combined are buying much more, so they can reduce the cost. I mean, it's a simple example, but that gives you an idea.
That my whole point is that we know we're going to need, on an average winter, we're going to need X amount of something like road salt. And yes, I know it's a dumb and boring example, but sometimes those boring examples, clarify things a lot better.
I would say it's even kind of more important, like, for instance, getting contractors to move the snow off the roads.
Yeah.
That you may be able to find a coordinated example where you might not be able to use the same contractor in every different spot, but to be able to coordinate, bring sort of regional and municipal snow removing into contracts that would reduce the cost of it all over. I'm not so sure how it works, because I'm really not a politician, and never said it, aside from, but anyway, it says here that a C.D. Howe Institute report from 2021 found that water and wastewater infrastructure made up almost 40% of the value of municipal assets in Ontario, and funding this infrastructure constitutes a significant portion of municipal capital budget.
Yeah.
can that help? You know what I mean? Can
Yep.
that?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No. Those are good examples. Yep. Also,
and then
the
the
other
same
one,
example was brought back, with the Ford, the Ford article prior to this. Wastewater was brought up again, particularly safe drinking water.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about making, and he said the Ford government wants to make clean water faster and affordable, and to quickly get permits out there to get that done. But at the same time, we had the Walker incident where a couple of people were killed because the water was not being treated correctly, and there was not enough oversight. So, and anyway, we're straying away from the main part of it. But anyway, so that's something just to look at. I know it's a kind of mundane article, but anytime you find cooperation and coordination between the municipalities, with the look of making things more efficient and less expensive, I think it's important to keep an eye on that.
Well, going from the mundane to the boom. Awop-bop-aloobop, alop-bam, right? It's Tutti Frutti, 70 years old today.
Yeah. So I just put this in, and
I still can't get my tongue around those opening words.
Awop-bop-aloobop, alop-bam-boom. So this is Tutti Frutti. It's a song. It's put out in 1955 by Little Richard. Little Richard was one of the groundbreakers of rock and roll, and he was admired everywhere. Most of the British pop scene from the 60s through the 80s took inspiration from Little Richard. When he toured Britain, everybody was insane to go see him. Of course, one of his backup band was the Beatles for a time there. So, but this particular song, Awop-bop-aloobop, alop-bam-boom, it came under a great deal of criticism because of the silly lyrics, and people said, "Oh, what's happening to music and everything?" But they missed the point. It was a lot of fun. The record was a lot of fun. Now, I only put it in here for a quick little look at because that is 70 years old, and that was one of the songs that launched rock and roll. It was very inspirational. Now, the thing that nobody really very few people understand is the lyrics are, well, they had to be cleaned up in order for it to become a song.
Yeah. But again, that's what's new. Sometimes, you have an idea and it kind of but it's not quite right.
Well, it is Tutti Frutti O Rudy. The song is made up with black gay slang, which people don't understand. The original lyric was Tutti Frutti, good
Allegedly.
booty. Not allegedly, for sure. It was Tutti Frutti, oh Rudy, good booty. Tutti Frutti, good booty, and it had to do with a lot of black slang. Little Richard himself was gay at a time when it was a serious problem to be gay. He got thrown out of his own home and everything else like that. So he that's something. And I think it's really hilarious when Pat Boone covered this for the white audiences. So Pat Boone was a whiter than white, good boy next door look. He was a pop singer, and he would cover black tunes. Like that's what they did back then. They took a black tune and put a white artist to sing it so they could sell more of it. So here's Pat Boone, who is a devout Christian and made no bones about it. He was a very good Christian, and that's part of his ethics, singing a song that was about black gays. I don't think he even realized what he was doing until many years later. But that's
well, okay. In a BBC interview, Little Richard hollered, "Let it all hang out." With the beautiful Little Richard from down in Macon, Georgia. I am the king of rock and roll.
Yeah, he had no. One thing about Little Richard, he didn't he didn't have any esteem issues. Let's put it that way.
I mean, Elvis Presley might object to that definition.
I don't think Elvis Presley ever claimed to be the king of rock and roll. They said he was. The good thing about
it was a title
one thing about Elvis Presley is he unabashedly took on black music and did not care who knew about it. And so did Jerry Lee Lewis and those guys too. So they were called the king of rock and roll because they took a black sound and put it into mainstream. But Elvis Presley never tried to deny it. It was black music. I mean, his first hit was "That's All Right, Mama" by Big Bill Crudup, I think the guy's name was. So yeah. But in any case, I just only brought that up because the rock and roll revolution that began in the 50s, this was 1955, a lot of it could be pinpointed on the Tutti Frutti O Rudy song that Little Richard wrote and performed, and it had so much influence. So I just thought the birthday of Tutti Frutti should be well known.
It was 20th of October, so it was yesterday, 70 years ago, that Tutti Frutti became an instant classic when it was released. Did it go straight to #1?
I don't know. They had Race Records back in those days, a designation called Race Records, and they had so it probably did very, very well right off the bat. But you see guys like Alan Freed, groundbreakers in popular music, that were devoting a lot of time to making sure that black artists got good airplay. He could see that it was hugely popular among white audiences, even though a lot of the parents didn't like it so much. So he promoted black artists, and I think a lot of credit should go his way. But it probably went up to #1 somewhere. It wasn't until like cover versions like from white artists that it really exploded, because sometimes you couldn't buy what was called Race Records all over the United States. Race Records was just basically a term for black music, and it could be any kind of music. But,
well, apparently it got to #17 on the Billboard pop charts.
Yeah, and when Pat Boone covered it,
Boone's version got to #12.
Yeah, so there you go. And but in any case, I don't know. I thought that was a cornerstone of rock and roll, and I just wanted to put out there for an interest article. So what do we got next?
Yeah, no, actually, it's good to take a different turn, right? Okay, yeah. What we got next? Very good question. LGBTQ and Christian advocacy groups are going to court over bus ads. They basically both been given intervenor status on bus ads, on some bus ads that have been controversial.
Yes, this is a classic challenge. Is it free speech, or is that free speech offensive to a portion of the population? Is it has it a negative effect on people, or does it or is it the free speech trumps
It starts because of an ad campaign proposed by the Christian Heritage Party of Canada, which was rejected by the city of Hamilton.
Well, this is not the first time that the Christian Heritage folks have put up signs that Hamilton Transit has taken down. Now, maybe you can, as a legal person, can you describe intervenous status?
Well, basically, intervenous status is that often what will happen with a case is, say, for example, you take offense to something and you start a case at the in the divisional court about something, but my organization, the organization that I run, that's that's operates federally or provincially or whatever, has an interest in the case because your case impacts people that are within my organization. So therefore my organization applies for intervenor status, and you might well be happy about that because suddenly now you've got the money to run a court case because now you've got a big organization getting involved, or you might be annoyed at that because the big organization is going to hijack your court case.
Well, in this particular case, it looks as if the court case will permit the Reformed Christian political advocacy organization and the LGBTQ whoever is spokesperson for them to be in the court to, I suppose, state their case.
Yeah. And well, what will happen is the plaintiff will state their case, the defendant will state their case, and then the intervening parties will actually have their will be able to state their cases as well.
Okay, so
I'm in an organization. I'm in an organization, the Ontario Paralegal Association, that has been in intervenor status in one case in the last 2 years.
Okay, so basically, the Reformed Political Action for this Christian network has had signs and up, and of course they're trying to express their opinions about stuff, and it has one where it has a woman, it states woman, an adult female, and then bringing respect for life and truth to the Canadian politics, but it has women from a grown woman to a girl, to a younger woman, to a girl, and then says that the fetus is actually a woman too, suggesting that is now should be a protected as a female, basically, or a potential woman. So somehow this is offensive to some people. I don't see why. It is, but there's other things they do here that the transgender community has felt that it has been the letter acknowledged the CHP's right to freedom of expression. So is this basically okay, let me get into something here. The described itself as a political party founded on Judeo-Christian principles and advances the platform consistent with Christian values. In a letter explaining its decision, the city said the ad jeopardized its ability to provide safe and welcoming transit system because of the harms the advertisement could generate for the transgender community. What kind of harms? That's what I want to know.
Well, the whole issue of
a man is a man and a woman is a woman. In one of their ads, I think they are trying to suggest that you should not be using sex transforming drugs in operations to transgender a person. They feel
Betty Zoom is basically saying anything to cause static.
I'm not so sure if it's static, but as an expression of opinion that they hope will make make kind of profound influence on whoever is looking at it. I think they want to get out their message that's saying that women are women, men are men, and the in between is not legitimate, is not a good thing to transition a person from one sex to another for a variety of different reasons. In their particular idea, it may be against their religious creed. And other opinions say that it's a dangerous thing to do to a person. Does this opinion really infringe upon the safety of transgender community?
Yeah, I get why there's a lot of hoo-ha about this, but I also understand that I've got a friend who transitioned from a man to a woman. I never thought of him as particularly, being that way. But when he transitioned, it was like, well, okay, fine. I'm not going to stop being your friend, because being a friend is an intellectual thing, right?
Yeah, I would strongly counsel anybody not to do that because of the. I think it's more of a social contagion than anything. If somebody is born a male and wants to transition to a female, I can understand somewhere in their mind they believe they should be a female and want to be a female. But I think it's a social contagion or more of a psychological thing. Well, you take a guy like Bruce Jenner, who got married and fathered children and became the premier athlete of the decathlon, all doing this while a male. But somehow during the whole thing, he believes he should be a female. But having accomplished everything that males would accomplish in his life, he goes about transitioning towards a female. Are you treating the right thing? In my view, because that is completely conflicted with nature. Now, by me saying any of that, is that now infringing upon the safety of the LGBTQ? I know a transition.
And actually, Dave, there are people in the LGBTQ community that don't like trans people as well.
Well, we reported on that.
Yeah,
there was the LGB community that rejected a whole lot of the transgender stuff. It's largely unreported, but there are a lot of feminists don't like that the transitioning thing too, because they feel a lot of times that their own rights are being infringed upon, particularly having men coming into the washrooms and change rooms.
Yeah, and that's the biggest challenge in all is having a born male who is hasn't yet transitioned. I would say that if you've not yet transitioned, you go into the gents changing room, not in the ladies. If you have transitioned, that's a different matter.
Well, I know a person that transitioned, and when you meet them, they're the most feminine person I've ever met in my life.
Yeah, yeah.
And their biggest problem is going into female washrooms. They think of themselves as female, but the women inside the washrooms will sometimes run them out of the washrooms. And yet, to tell you the truth, if you didn't take a good look, you wouldn't know that this particular person is not a woman.
Yeah, it's usually that 5 o'clock shadow that tells.
Yes, well, it depends on when they begin to transition. I think it's a question that remains unanswered. But when somebody puts their view about this and say a woman is a woman, then is that anything more different from a different opinion that you disagree with? The Communist Party of Canada could put up, I think I've seen them too, on billboards in subways and stuff about the Communist Party or whatever. Is that threatening?
No.
What about like if a fascist party if a Nazi party sign came up? Yeah, that would be threatening.
Well, it depends.
Would it be actually illegal?
It's not illegal if you actually if you're a fascist party of Canada and you're putting up your beliefs, and you're the Communist Party of Canada and you're putting up your beliefs in an election era, both would have the right to put up their beliefs so long as they're not putting up hate speech on either side.
Let's put it this way: there is no fascist party in Canada right now, but there is communist parties.
Yeah.
But you can have a far right party like the People's Party of Canada, which is very nationalistic and pushes hard to the right. Now, some of their sayings may be objectionable, but so what? You have to put them up there because it's a legitimate party in Canada. Communist Party too. It might be objectionable to you. You may have come from a communist party, a communist country, and find that be very threatening to you. As we've heard from some people, anytime they see something that makes them think that there's going to be communist-like regulations, they point it out very quickly. Look, I came from a communist country. You don't want to do that.
Yeah, I get it, and they've got the right to put, as the communists got the right to point out what their policies are. The person who's come from a communist country has got the right to point out how bad they believe those policies to be.
Well, yeah, but they're not going to be able to afford a sign to put up beside it.
Yeah.
So my point here is there are going to be potentially offending things that you put up in a subway or in a bus.
Yeah.
If it's an opinion, a political opinion, a religious opinion. So I think, like if the jihadists put up one in there and said that it's good to blow up the World Trade Center, you can object to that completely. You would never approve something like that. But anything that is, hello Nancy, all the way from Cleveland. Anyway, so I think, like, for instance, like the Communist Party of Canada or the far right People's Party of Canada put up ads in there. So what? That's what they're supposed to be.
We've got constitutional guarantees that limit what they can do anyway.
Yeah, but they will not, by offending some people or annoying some people, it's not going to jeopardize their safety.
Yeah.
Is the Reform Christian movement putting up ads, is it infringing upon the safety of the transgender community?
Yeah. And what they're basically saying here is it's a legal balancing act with this question. It's, they've got to look at freedom of expression under the Charter and also public safety and inclusivity. And that's key factor about what this court case is all about.
Yeah, I think even though I may not necessarily agree with any of the statements by the Christian party there, I think they have the right to put their the thing there because the LGBTQ community can do exactly the same thing, and that would be very offensive to a lot of other people.
Yeah,
that they're on. There's a great deal of controversy for transitioning people and stuff like that. A lot of people, the Christians think it's just a sin, but other people think it's just not a good idea. It infringes upon the health of the person. Is it, and when they welcome men into women's washrooms, that kind of thing. So that could be thought to be offensive to a lot of people. So if I was the judge in this particular case, and I tried to imagine what the LGBTQ movement might put up in a subway or a bus, comparing that with this will go movement. I think it would probably be ignored by most people.
Take my word for it. This will go to the Supreme Court in 10 years.
You think so?
Yes, I do. It'll be argued through the Supreme Court at the end of the day.
My issue is, even though I follow along with Noam Chomsky on this, and I'm sure this goes across political barriers, that you have to have as much free speech as possible.
Yeah,
I can understand people walking down the street and being Nazis and calling for Jews to be put in concentration camps. That is not good for society, and that's a stretch too far. But everything up to and including that, like when some people, the Heritage Society or the Heritage Party claimed that there was no Holocaust and all that in Canada, that was deeply offensive, particularly to the soldiers that went over there and fought to remove Nazism, and of course to the Jewish community and everybody else. Is deeply offensive. However, he had the right to say it, and what we find on both the right and the left in the West right now, you have these efforts to censor one or the other. And I don't think that's a good idea. I think as much free speech as possible, but we'll see what the court says about it.
Okay, I'm going to move on to something else that's loosely related. Niagara's men take to their feet to help end gender-based violence. They have high heels, and the campaign is called "Put Yourself in Her Shoes."
Yeah, well, we just finished with the transgender thing, and men walking around in high heels shoes. Is that going to be offensive?
It is to some people, but yeah, the point being isn't that they're saying that they are going to be walking around in high heels. It's to it's to point out the issue about gender-based violence.
I suppose it's symbolic, but there are going to be some people that think that that's trying to effeminize men or something of that kind, of course. But it's just a kind of a silly way of saying for men, particularly men who do not understand gender violence, particularly guys like you and me who don't engage in anything like that or don't witness much of it. I don't think we could really see the woman's points of view in this particular case thoroughly, because women that have been violently used by particularly their spouses, live in a sort of a zone of steady fear, and it takes the rest of us to pay attention to that, to make sure that those people are protected. And I think when I first saw it, I said, "Oh God, you got a bunch of guys walking around in high heel shoes. Everybody's just going to call them a bunch of ponces." But no, that's not going to happen. They're going to wear the high heel shoes because it looks silly, but it makes a very good point that people have to pay attention to that. So by putting yourself in their shoes, particularly men, it forces us to look at a situation that many women have to face daily, every day. It's very hard to get the attention when you start talking about domestic violence and women facing violence daily, particularly in domestic situations. When you come from a pretty ordinary home where your mother and your father, you had no fear. You had no fear that your father is going to hit your mother. You have no fear that you yourself are going to hit your spouse. You just don't think of it.
Yeah.
And for me, I walked down. I met a neighbor of mine a few years ago. Well, many years now. and she had been an abused woman, and she told me her story about going through being raised in a house where her mother was abused, and then her first partner was a man that abused her. Her second partner was another man that abused her.
I spoke with her.
When she met her third partner, and he was not an abuser, she was shocked. She really didn't know what to do. It was kind of a transition for her.
Well, actually, there was a doctor I spoke as a specialist in that kind of area, and there's one of the troubles with people who've grown, or women who've grown up in abuse households, often often take on partners who are abusive and they often are in a situation whereby they are addicted to the abuse, if you know what I mean. They know it's wrong for them, but they're addicted.
I'm sorry, they're accustomed. They're accustomed. It's what they know. And as human beings, we go for familiarity. We go for those things that are familiar to us. That's what we know. If a woman then, like I said, I talked about this woman, and she was thanking her lucky stars. And I met her husband. He was just an ordinary, everyday guy. So imagine, he's just a dude, a regular guy. We talked about work and all this, and the travails of working and getting laid off and stuff like that. So he's between jobs because of certain plant had closed down, and I knew all about that. So we talked man to man. If I talked to him without having heard her story first, I would never have thought anything of it. But in her eyes, this was a wonderful thing. Her husband was a very wonderful thing to happen to her. She was living in an abuse-free environment since the day she met and married that guy.
I've got a question for you.
She was sort of startled the whole time and bewildered, waiting to get cuffed and yelled at and put down, and that didn't happen. So she believed she just by luck. Now, I suppose a certain amount of counseling can help women stop that loop of always finding a guy that will beat them. It's just like the ones that go for an alcoholic. If you've grown up with an alcoholic, you find another alcoholic. It's just what we do as humans, find familiar ground, something that we're comfortable with.
Got a final question for you, Dave.
Yeah.
Because we're going to have to leave it at this point, right? Why are there so many Blue Jays flying around? They won last night on Game 7, so they're in the World Series.
Well, I have to tell you, I started watching the game, and the Jays were losing 3-1, and I'm thinking, oh boy, So I watched a few innings, and then I thought, I'm not going to pay too much attention to this because I thought the inevitable would happen to a Toronto team; they would go down. But so I was fixing myself a snack, and I had the TV on, and I looked up. Just as I looked up, Springer was at bat, and at that very moment, he hit the 3-run dinger that put them 4-3, and that was the runs that won them the game.
And that's how they stayed for the rest of the game. Yeah.
And so I was absolutely delighted, but then biting my nails for the rest of now I'd been calm the whole thing. Whatever happens, happens. I'm just going to enjoy the baseball game. But soon as the Jays draw ahead by one single point, one single run, I was biting my nails from that point on. So every pitch seemed to take an hour to pitch.
And then Hoffman came in for closing, and he closed it out quite well.
Yeah, and he was starting to lose his stuff near the end there too. Like he was in and off. He took a couple of them off.
Good closers often want to put some people on the bases in order to, they need that pressure on themselves. The good closer does.
Yeah. Anyway, we're off to the World Series.
Yeah.
and
Starts
it will be
Friday. Starts Friday.
Okay? I gotta say, this plucky team has really come out of nowhere, hasn't it?
Well, they've been in the lead of the American League East at least for half the season. They've done a very good job, you know, and when you consider they stayed on top, you know, even when the Yankees were resurging. And everybody knows I'm a Yankees fan, but anyway, you know, good luck to the Blue Jays. I suspect Dodgers is going to be a hard task because Dodgers want to repeat.
Well, I just gotta say that I don't think the Cleveland Guardians have got anything coming anytime soon. So sorry about that, Nancy. But we'll lend you the Blue Jays for now. You can vote. You can root for them.
Well, it's an East versus West situation, right?
Yeah. Well, in this particular case, it was, and Seattle has got a really good team, but they lost in Game 7 by 1 run.
Yeah.
How more closely?
And in fact, if you think about it, the only time the Blue Jays were in the lead was in the 7th inning when Springer scored that was it 7th? I think it was 6th or 7th inning when he scored that 3-run homer. That's the only time they've actually been in the lead of the entire series.
Yes, and I have to say, well, they are a really plucky, really good team. They seem to be able to dig it out when they need it. But you got to say that it was an extraordinarily good series when it's Game 7 and the winning team won by 1 run. And it was a closely fought battle right to the very end.
Yeah.
And one swing of the bat was all the difference.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, but Springer himself said that the 2 hits that came prior to that made it possible because his dinger by itself wouldn't have done any. It would have.
Yeah, his dinger by itself would have done nothing if there hadn't been 2 people on base.
That's right.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
We always have to remember that this is a team effort.
Good luck to the Jays. Good luck to the Jays. Let's see where it goes. None the least because we want to see what happens with Donald Trump's invitation or not.
Oh well, I don't know. He'll probably try to arrest or cancel or indict the Blue Jays as a foreign invader.
All right. Okay. So I think we can say goodbye to that.
Yep. I just want to bring up Gaza again. It turns out that when the Israelis started throwing bombs at the Palestinians the other day, it turns out that because they accused them of shooting and killing a couple Israeli soldiers, it turns out that might have been because the Israeli soldiers drove over unexploded ordnance of their own ordnance and killed, and then of course they overreacted.
Huh.
We are on tenterhooks here because we don't know. We do know that Netanyahu wants to extend the war. He's up against corruption charges in his own country, and they've shut off supplies on and off to the Palestinian people. I think the pressure should continue, and if Trump can get this done, it will show me that he can actually do something other than bully people. His performance with Zelensky the other day was just sheer silliness. But as far as Gaza goes, if he can really concentrate on this and finally stop succumbing to Netanyahu and have his own will, I hope that it will go forward well. Anyway, without further ado, I bid you adieu, and I hope the peace.